The stellar explorer drifted silently through the endless darkness, its colossal hull illuminated only by the distant glow of an ordinary yellow star. Beyond the forward viewports lay an uncharted system that no intelligent civilization had ever surveyed. Across the ship, thousands of sensors swept through the void, collecting data from every planet in the system. On the primary observation deck, Dr. Smith stood perfectly still, all four of his eyes locked on the holographic projection of the third planet. At first glance, it appeared unremarkable, a blue world wrapped in white clouds, but the numbers scrolling across the display told a very different story. His scaled fingers tapped nervously against the console. "That can't be right," he whispered. "Run the atmospheric analysis again." There was a brief pause before the ship's artificial intelligence replied in its calm, emotionless voice. "Analysis complete, Doctor. Results are unchanged. Atmospheric composition remains consistent with previous scans. Atmosphere contains significant levels of corrosive oxygen, nitrogen, and various other toxic compounds." Dr. White, the ship's geological expert, floated over to join him, her tentacles wrapped around a support beam as she studied the readings. "Look at these tectonic readings," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "The entire crust is fractured into moving plates. The planet is literally tearing itself apart and rebuilding continuously." Dr. Smith nodded, his crest rising in agitation. "And the gravity readings are off the charts for a planet this size, nearly 10 times what most spacefaring species evolved in." He paused, watching as more data streamed across the screen. The temperature variations are extreme too, from freezing to boiling in the same regions, depending on the rotation cycle. The research team gathered around the main display, each specialist adding their observations to the growing list of impossible conditions. The planet before them defied everything they knew about habitable worlds. "According to our classification system," Dr. White said, her color shifting to a pale blue of concern, "this would grade beyond Class 12. Nothing could possibly survive there." Dr. Smith activated the ship's long-range cameras, and the image of the planet filled the main screen. Swirling white clouds covered much of its surface, revealing glimpses of blue and green. Beneath, lightning storms raged across entire continents, while massive cyclonic storms churned across its oceans. "Look at the water content," another researcher pointed out. "Most of the surface is covered in liquid water. Not just any water, salt water, a corrosive soup of minerals that would dissolve most spacefaring species on contact." The ship's AI interrupted their "Doctor, I've completed the full planetary analysis. This world ranks as a Class 14 on the habitability scale. This exceeds all known parameters for sustainable life." The announcement sent a wave of murmurs through the research team. No one had ever encountered anything beyond Class 12 before. The very concept of a Class 14 Deathworld was theoretical at best. Dr. Smith began recording his official log research date. 47/2199. "We have encountered what appears to be the most hostile, potentially habitable planet ever discovered. The combination of high gravity, extreme temperatures, toxic atmosphere, and geological instability should make this world completely impossible for any form of advanced life." He paused, looking at the beautiful but deadly world, spinning slowly on the main screen. "We are designating this as the first confirmed Class 14. Deathworld. The very existence of such a planet will require us to revise our understanding of planetary formation and the limits of survivable conditions." Dr. White approached him, her tentacles writhing with excitement, despite her concern. "Should we launch probe satellites for closer observation?" "No," Dr. Smith replied firmly. "The atmospheric conditions would destroy our standard probes. We'll need to design special hardened versions just to survive entering the upper atmosphere." He turned to address the entire team. "For now, we maintain a safe distance and continue our observations. No one is to approach within 1 orbital unit of this death trap until we fully understand what we're learning." Dealing with as the research team dispersed to their stations to begin their analysis, Dr. Smith remained at the main viewport, staring at the swirling storms. Visible on the planet's surface, something about this world nagged at him, a feeling he couldn't quite place in all his years of planetary survey work. He'd never encountered anything like it. Little did he know, this discovery would soon shake the foundations of galactic science and force every spacefaring species to reevaluate their place in the universe. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Science Council buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 100 different species gathered for the emergency session. The massive chamber with its soaring crystal dome and floating platforms had never been so packed. Dr. Smith stood at the central podium, his research data projected in massive holograms around the chamber. Behind him, the image of the deadly planet slowly rotated at its swirling storms and fractured continents, visible to all distinguished members of the council. He began, his voice steady, despite his nervousness. What we have discovered challenges everything we thought we knew about planetary classification. The chief scientist of the crystalline worlds, a beam made of living crystal, raised his glowing form. Dr. Smith, are you seriously suggesting we need to create an entirely new classification beyond Class 12? The system has served us for 10 years. The evidence is undeniable, Dr. Smith replied, bringing up the atmospheric readings. The oxygen levels alone would cause most of our species to combust spontaneously. The atmospheric pressure would crush standard environment suits. And that's just the beginning. He gestured, and new data filled the air. The gravity is nearly double what we consider survivable for long-term habitation. The temperature swings would shatter most known life forms. There are regions where liquid water falls from the sky, carrying enough force to punch through standard protection. Here the council chamber erupted in murmurs. A representative from the gas-based species floated forward, their form rippling with agitation. How can such a planet even exist? The combination of conditions should tear it apart. Dr. White, who had a NAND. Dr. Smith to the presentation activated her own data stream. Not only does it exist, but it's remarkably stable. The magnetic field is powerful enough to interfere with standard sensors. The geological activity, while constant, appears to be part of a self-regulating system. The Council's head researcher, an ancient being, known simply as the Elder, raised all 6 of their arms for silence. What you're describing isn't just a Class 13 world. This goes beyond even that theoretical classification. Exactly, Dr. Smith said, his crest rising with excitement. Despite the serious nature of the discussion, we're proposing a new classification, Class 14, a planet so hostile that even our most advanced environmental systems cannot fully protect against its conditions. A holographic simulation appeared, showing what would happen to various environmental suits and exploration vehicles under the planet's conditions. One by one, they failed in spectacular ways. Suits crumpled under the gravity dissolved in the atmosphere, or shattered from temperature extremes. We recommend establishing a permanent observation post at a safe distance, Dr. White added. But any attempts to land on the surface would be suicide with our current technology. The Elder floated down to examine the data more closely. In all my centuries of research, I've never seen anything like this. The implications for our understanding of planetary formation are staggering. Another scientist, a being of pure energy, contained within a special field, spoke up. What about the potential for life? Surely nothing could evolve in such conditions. Dr. Smith hesitated before responding. We've detected some unusual energy readings that might indicate artificial satellites, but our instruments have difficult penetrating the atmospheric interference. Further study is needed. The council chamber fell into deep discussion with various scientific factions, arguing about the implications. Some insisted the readings must be wrong, while others demanded immediate funding for new research initiatives. Finally, the Elder called for order. The evidence is clear. We hereby officially recognize this as the first Class 14 Deathworld. All approach to the planet is forbidden, without special council approval. Dr. Smith, your team will continue observations from a safe distance. As the session ended, and the scientists filed out, Dr. Smith couldn't help but feel they were missing something important. The planet's pattern seemed almost familiar. Though he couldn't explain why, what none of them realized was that their new classification system was about to meet its greatest challenge yet. The planet they were so afraid of wasn't just a death world, it was something far more surprising. The observation post, Distant Watch, oared carefully at the edge of the solar system. Its advanced sensors trained on the Class 14 Death World. 3 months had passed since the Council's decision, and the research team had settled into a routine of careful monitoring. Dr. Smith sat at his monitoring station when the first anomaly appeared. A blip on the quantum scanner, something moving in a decidedly non-sexual pattern around the deadly planet computer in Hand Sector 7, he commanded, leaning forward. What am I looking at? The AI processed. The data object appears to be artificial in nature. Metallic composition orbit suggests deliberate placement. Dr. White hurried over her tentacles, curling with excitement. A satellite, but that's impossible. Nothing could survive launching from that surface. More blips appeared on the scanner. Dozens of them, then hundreds, forming a complex network around the planet. The research team gathered around the main display, watching in stunned silence as the evidence of artificial technology became undeniable. "Look at these radio waves," one of the junior researchers said, pulling up a new data stream. "They're not natural emissions. These are communication signals." Dr. Smith felt his scales tingle with anticipation. Computer begin decoding the transmissions. All known linguistic patterns. Hours passed as the team worked frantically to understand what they were seeing. The signals were complex, carrying massive amounts of data. Images began to form from the decoded transmissions. Pictures and videos of things that should not be possible by the ancient stars. Dr. White whispered, her color shifting rapidly. "Those are cities. Entire cities spread across that death trap of a surface." The images showed massive structures of metal and stone, reaching toward the toxic sky. Strange vehicles moved through the air and on the ground, but most shockingly, they could see beings moving about without any visible environmental protection. "The signals are definitely coming from the surface." Dr. Smith confirmed, his four eyes wide with disbelief. "We're looking at a fully developed technological civilization. One that not only survived on a Class 14 Deathworld, but mastered it." The team watched as more data poured in. They saw massive vessels launching from the surface, punching through the lethal atmosphere, as if it were nothing. The beings had mastered space travel, all while living in conditions that should have made advanced life impossible. "We need to report this to the Council immediately," Dr. White said, already preparing the transmission. "This changes everything we thought we knew about survival parameters." Dr. Smith raised his hand. "Wait, first. Contact protocols require us to attempt communication before reporting. We need to know if they're aware of galactic civilization." The team worked quickly to prepare a standard first contact message, translating it into basic mathematical sequences that any advanced civilization should understand. They sent it toward one of the larger artificial satellites, hoping it would be received. Hours passed as they waited anxiously. Then suddenly their receivers lit up with a response. "They're not just responding," the communications officer announced, his feathers standing on end. "They're responding in perfect galactic standard." The message was clear and direct. "Greetings, observers. We've been wondering when you'd finally say hello. Would you like to establish proper communications?" The observation post erupted in chaos. A civilization living on a Class 14 Deathworld was impressive enough, but one that already knew about galactic civilization, it seemed impossible. Dr. Smith took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Send our confirmation request full diplomatic contact." He turned to his team. "Whatever we thought we knew about life in this galaxy, we were wrong. Very wrong." As they waited for the response, he couldn't help but wonder what other surprises this impossible world had in store for them. They had just taken their first step into what would surely be the most important first contact in galactic history. None of them were prepared for what they would learn next. The docking bay of Distant Watch hummed with nervous energy as the research team prepared to meet their first visitors from the Deathworld. Dr. Smith checked the environmental seals for the 10th time, ensuring the special containment chamber was ready for beings from such an extreme environment. Incoming vessel detected. The station's AI announced design unknown. No match in galactic database. Through the observation window, they watched as a sleek ship approached. It moved with impossible grace for its size, showing technology that seemed far advanced, beyond what they'd expected. "Look at that hull," Dr. White commented, her tentacles twitching. "It's not even using standard radiation shielding. How are they surviving the solar winds?" The ship docked with a gentle thud, connecting to their airlock. The research team waited behind thick protective barriers, ready to observe these incredible beings through multiple layers of safety glass. The airlock cycled, and they all held their breath. Then, to their absolute shock, the inner door opened, and two beings walked in, wearing nothing but light clothing, no environmental suits, no protective nothing. "Hello there," one of them called out cheerfully, waving at the stunned scientists. "I'm Captain Miller, and this is my science officer, Dr. Thompson. Hope you don't mind us coming aboard like this." Dr. Smith's four eyes blinked rapidly. In confusion, the bee looked so normal, bipedal, two eyes, no obvious defensive features. How could they possibly survive on that hellish world? But But the atmosphere here, he stammered. It's calibrated for standard galactic life forms. How are you breathing? Captain Miller smiled. Oh, this is pretty close to what we're used to. Actually bit thin. If anything, mind if we adjust the gravity though. It's a little light. In here, the research team watched in horror as Dr. Thompson casually walked to the environmental controls and increased the gravity to nearly double its current level. Both humans visibly relaxed. That's better, Dr. Thompson said. Now we understand you've been studying our planet. We thought it might be helpful to explain a few things. Dr. White floated forward. Your world. It's impossible. The conditions there would kill any known species. The gravity alone. You mean Earth? Captain Miller chuckled. It's actually quite nice this time of year. We're having a mild summer. Only about 308 Kelvin in the temperate zones. Earth. Dr. Smith repeated the strange word. That's what you call it. Home sweet home. Dr. Thompson nodded. Been there since we first crawled out of the oceans. Took us a while to develop spaceflight, what with having to deal with that pesky thick atmosphere and high gravity well. But we managed. The scientists stared in disbelief. These beings weren't just surviving on the Deathworld. They had evolved there. It was their planet of origin. But the oxygen. One researcher protested. The corrosive effects. Oh, we need that to breathe, Captain Miller explained casually. Can't live without it. Actually great for metabolic processes. Really gets the blood pumping. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. What they had classified as a deadly toxic environment was actually necessary for these beings' survival. The most hostile planet they had ever encountered had produced a spacefaring species that considered those conditions comfortable. Would you like to see some of our historical records? Dr. Thompson offered, pulling out a data pad. We've got some lovely footage of children playing in the rain. That's when water falls from the sky. Absolutely normal weather pattern for us. Dr. Smith felt his scales crawling as he realized what this meant for the galaxy. These humans, as they called themselves, weren't just surviving in Class 14 conditions. They had thrived, advanced, and were now reaching out to the stars, treating as comfortable. What other species considered lethal, I think, he said slowly. We're going to need to rethink our entire classification system. Captain Miller grinned. Oh, just wait until we tell you about our extreme sports. Ever heard of something called skydiving? The research station's main conference room had been adjusted to human comfort levels, much to the discomfort of the alien scientists, who now required personal gravity dampeners to move around. Captain Miller stood before the large display screen, casually clicking through Earth's historical records. So this was one of our early wars, he explained, showing images of ancient battles. Just small stuff, really only about 50 million casualties. Dr. Smith felt his scales flatten against his body in shock. You call that small? Such losses would devastate most civilizations. Oh, that wasn't even our biggest conflict, Dr. Thompson added from her seat. We had 2 global wars in the same century. The second one involved atomic weapons. That's when we learned how to split atoms for explosions. Nasty business. But we got better after that. The images shifted to show vast cities rising from scorched earth, rebuilding at an impossible pace. The humans had not only survived planetary devastation, but had emerged stronger. Here's something interesting. Captain Miller continued, showing footage of early space programs. This was before we had proper safety protocols. We used to strap ourselves to massive chemical rockets and hope for the best. Lost a few good people, but it got us to our moon. Dr. White's tentacles coiled tightly. You risked death just to reach your satellite. Well, yeah. Thompson shrugged. Had to start somewhere. Exploration is pretty safe now, though only about 2% fatality rate in training. The presentation continued, showing humans surviving in environments that the alien scientists could barely comprehend. They watched footage of people climbing frozen mountains without protective gear, diving into deep oceans with minimal equipment, and even deliberately jumping out of flying vehicles for entertainment. This is what we call an average wilderness survival situation, Miller explained, showing a human alone in a forest. Most of us learn basic survival skills in school. You know how to find water, make fire, avoid the more dangerous predators. More dangerous predators, Dr. Smith repeated weakly. You mean there are less dangerous ones? Oh, sure, Thompson laughed. Most Earth predators won't bother you if you make your look big and make loud noises except bears and big cats and some of the more aggressive marine life. But that's why we teach children what to do in animal encounters. The aliens watched in horrified fascination as the humans casually described living on a world where the very atmosphere could generate deadly electrical storms, where the ground itself regularly shook and split open, and where liquid water routinely fell from the sky with enough force to strip bark from trees. And this is a typical Earth day, Miller said, showing a weather report. See? Nice and calm. Only a few tornadoes in the Midwest, a small hurricane forming in the Atlantic, and some mild seismic activity along the Pacific Rim. Mild, one of the researchers squeaked. Sure, Thompson nodded. Only about 5 on the RAR scale. Barely enough to rattle the windows. Dr. Smith finally found his voice again. Your species. You've not just survived these conditions, you've built civilizations, developed technology, and reached the stars, all while considering this normal. Pretty much, Miller confirmed. Though we did have to work around some challenges. Took us a while to figure out how to build cities that could withstand regular natural disasters, and dealing with our planets, bacteria, and viruses. Was tricky until we developed good medicine. The room fell silent as the aliens processed this information. They had discovered not just a species that could survive on a Class 14 Deathworld, but one that had evolved there, considering its deadly conditions to be perfectly normal. One last thing, Thompson added cheerfully. We've actually started terraforming projects on Mars. That's another planet in our system. We're trying to make it more Earth-like. You know, increase the gravity, thicken the atmosphere, add some weather patterns. Dr. Smith and his team exchanged worried glances. The humans weren't just surviving in what should be impossible conditions. They were actively trying to create more of them. The galaxy would never be the same. Inside the most heavily armored research shuttle ever constructed, Dr. Smith and his team approached Earth's orbit. Each member wore the latest in protective gear, their suits designed to withstand what they expected would be lethal conditions. Final safety check complete. Dr. White announced her tentacles, operating multiple control panels at once. Triple-layered shields, active hull integrity, at maximum emergency teleport beacons. Charge Captain Miller's voice came through their communication. System sounding amused. You folks really don't need all that gear. But if it makes you comfortable, the shuttle descended through the atmosphere, the reinforced hull creaking under pressures that the humans navigated daily, in much lighter vessels, through the viewports. The alien scientists watched lightning dance around their ship, each bolt carrying enough energy to power a small colony. They landed at a designated area called a public park in what the humans called moderate weather conditions. The research team triple-checked their environmental suits before stepping out. What they saw defied everything they understood about survivable conditions. A small human child ran past their shuttle, chasing what appeared to be a 4-legged companion. Animal neither wore any protective gear. The child was making high-pitched sounds that Captain Miller identified as laughter. That's little Tommy and his dog Rex, Miller explained through their comms. They're regulars here. Dr. Smith checked his sensors in disbelief. The child is exposing bare skin to direct solar radiation, and they're both inhaling the oxygen-rich atmosphere directly nearby. A group of humans were engaged in what they called a picnic, voluntarily sitting on the ground and consuming organic matter in the open air. Some were even lying directly on the grass, seemingly unconcerned about the countless microorganisms their sensors detected. Dr. White's color shifted rapidly as she processed the readings. The atmospheric pressure alone should be crushing them, and these temperature variations, they're experiencing a 15-degree Kelvin shift, just from moving between sunlight and shade. A rumbling sound made the research team huddle together in fear, but the humans didn't react. Just a small tremor, Thompson explained, joining them outside without any protective gear. The tectonic plates shift all the time. You get used to it. The scientists watched in horror as dark clouds gathered overhead, and the humans casually opened small portable force field devices, they called umbrellas, as water began falling from the sky. Should we evacuate? One researcher asked nervously, noting how the water was literally falling with enough force to impact their protective shields. It's just a light spring shower, Miller laughed. Perfect weather for the plants. Speaking of which, would you like to see the botanical gardens? We have some lovely specimens of carnivorous plants. The team followed their human guides, their sensors constantly warning them of new hazards they passed, areas where humans deliberately exposed themselves to increased UV radiation, sunbathing, Watch children intentionally spinning themselves to induce dizziness. Playground, and observe humans voluntarily increasing their heart rates through rapid movement. Jogging, and here's where we hold our outdoor concerts. Thompson pointed to a large open area. Sometimes up to 100,000 people gather here, in these conditions. Dr. Smith asked, incredulous, without any protective enclosures. Well, unless it's raining too hard, then we might set up some tents, Miller replied casually. Though music festivals in the mud can be fun too. The research team huddled in their protective suits, watching humans casually defy death in countless ways. A group of teenagers rolled past, cast-on-wheel devices. Skateboards intentionally launching themselves into the air, despite the lethal gravity. I think I understand now, Dr. White said quietly. We've been looking at this all wrong. This isn't just a high-class death world. This is what humans consider normal, even comfortable, as if to emphasize her point. A small human child walked up to their group, looking curiously at their protective gear. Are you the aliens? She asked, licking something called an ice cream, that their sensors indicated was at a temperature that would freeze most species solid. Do you want to play frisbee? The scientists declined as politely as possible, all while wondering what other surprises this impossible species had in store for them. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Science Council had never been so quiet. Representatives from every spacefaring species sat in stunned silence as they watched the footage from Earth. Dr. Smith stood at the podium, delivering what would become the most important scientific presentation in galactic history. As you can see, he continued, gesturing to the holographic display, humans don't simply survive in Class 14 conditions, they thrive in them. What we consider lethal, they consider mild. The display showed humans performing various activities, swimming in corrosive oceans, climbing mountains in thin air, and even deliberately exposing themselves to extreme temperature variations for what they called vacation. Their cities, Dr. White added, from her position beside him, are built to withstand regular natural disasters. They don't just survive earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and atmospheric storms. They have turned adapting to these conditions into an art form. The elder floated forward, all 6 arms trembling slightly. What are the implications for Galactic society? Dr. Smith brought up new data. Humans are already establishing colonies on worlds we considered marginally habitable. They're transforming planets to be more like Earth, making them more hostile by our standards, but more comfortable by theirs. A wave of murmur swept through the chamber. The idea of intentionally making planets more dangerous was almost incomprehensible. Their technology, Dr. Smith continued, is developed along completely different lines than ours. They build for durability against conditions we never even considered survivable. Their ships can withstand pressures that would crush our strongest vessels. The display shifted to show human medical data. Their bodies are extraordinary. They can heal from injuries that would kill most species. They can adapt to almost any environment. They even deliberately expose themselves to controlled amounts of poison to build immunity. Most concerning, Dr. White added, is their psychological profile. Humans appear to be drawn to challenge and danger. They intentionally seek out difficult conditions, not out of necessity, but for what they call entertainment, or sport. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives argued for immediate restrictions on human expansion. Others saw opportunities for cooperation, particularly in colonizing worlds previously thought uninhabitable. We must also consider, Dr. Smith said, raising his voice slightly, that humans have developed these capabilities while being completely isolated. From galactic society, they achieved space travel, despite having to escape a gravity well that would trap most civilizations. The elder raised all 6 arms for silence. What are your recommendations, Dr. Smith? First, we must completely revise our understanding of habitable conditions. The human example proves our classifications were far too limited. He paused, looking around the chamber. Second, we need to establish special protocols for human interaction. What they consider safe may be lethal to us, and vice versa. And most importantly, Dr. White added, we need to prepare for humanity's emergence into the wider galaxy. They're not just survivors of a death world, they're a species forged by conditions we can barely comprehend. The council deliberated for hours. Finally, they reached several historic decisions. Earth was reclassified as the template for a new category, human-compatible worlds. The old classification system was retired. Entirely special diplomatic protocols were established for human interaction, including safety measures to protect other species from what humans considered normal conditions. A new division of the Science Council was created to study human adaptation capabilities and their potential. Applications. As the session ended, Dr. Smith gathered his materials, still processing the magnitude of their discoveries. A junior researcher approached him, looking nervous. "Doctor," they said quietly, "the humans just sent us new data. They've discovered 3 more Earth-like planets in unexplored systems. They're planning colonization missions already." Dr. Smith felt his scales tingle. The galaxy was about to change. Forever the species that everyone had thought impossible would soon be spreading opros. Among the stars, seeking new challenges, new dangers, and new worlds to conquer. The age of humanity had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. "Send word to all exploration vessels," he said firmly. "If they find what they think is an impossible world, check first to see if humans are already there. They'd probably call it home."